Hi, my name is Lena Golubtsova. I'm a strategic programs manager at Toronto Arts Council, and I will be talking today about Animating Toronto Parks granting program. To begin, I would like to offer land acknowledgement. Toronto Arts Council respectfully acknowledges the diversity of Indigenous cultures and their connection to the natural world we are privileged to share. We honor the Wendat, the Anishinaabe peoples, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and others who have walked this land or paddled these waters. We are grateful to the ancestors and elders of their peoples and to their descendants who live and work with us on the back of the great turtle. The Animating Toronto Parks program, what is the program all about? It is a TAC strategic program that is in partnership with the City of Toronto Parks and Recreation, Toronto Arts Foundation's Arts in the Parks, and Park People. The program offers grants of up to $25,000 to create and present free arts programming in any arts discipline. It is open to individual artists, arts organizations, and collectives. It funds free arts programming in selected Toronto parks in Etobicoke, East York, York, North York, and Scarborough. The arts programming can be really in any artistic discipline such as dance, music, community engaged arts, and so on. With that said, the limited time or event-based activities are actually doing much better for this program than something that is more static, such as installation. However, it is not impossible to do installation-based work. I would just recommend that you reach out and discuss your idea with me in this case in particular. All the projects must be free and open to the public, and they also must include community consultation or engagement. All the funded projects will take place in the summer of the following year and will be part of Arts in the Parks programming. The program offers funding toward artist fees and production elements, support with navigating park permitting and special events, park permits from City of Toronto Parks and Recreation at no cost. However, any additional permits such as noise exemption will be subject to a fee potentially, as well as if you require to rent portable bathrooms, that would need to come out of your project budget. The grant recipients will be offered coverage under TEC liability insurance, which is particularly relevant if you're applying as an individual or a collective and do not have ongoing liability insurance in place. You also will be introduced to park people and local community and parks groups, and you will receive support under Toronto Arts Foundation's Arts in the Parks initiative, such as support with marketing, community engagement, on-site wayfinding, and volunteer coordination. And even though I'm not going to talk a lot or actually not at all about amazing initiative Arts in the Parks, I would encourage everybody to look into it before applying for the Animating Toronto Parks program, because by becoming a grant recipient in this program, you will automatically be a participant in Arts in the Parks. The website is actually quite amazing in that you can see the past projects that were taking place all over the city in the parks as part of this initiative. And many of those projects actually have been funded through Animating Toronto Parks program. So if you have a question, what kind of projects get funded through this program? Arts in the Parks website actually is a place for you to check that out. And so importantly, the grant covers up to 100% of project costs. That includes artist fees, equipment rental, materials, and all other costs associated with the project. You can secure additional funding if your budget is higher than the maximum grant amount in this program, but this is not a requirement, which is really amazing. One new addition to this funding program that TAC introduced in 2026 is recurrent funding opportunity. It is the opportunity that will provide a grant for 3 consecutive years. Applicants approved for 3 years of recurrent funding will be notified in the year in which they apply. The grant amounts will be released annually upon submitting interim reporting. To be considered for recurrent 3-year funding, the applicants must have received the Animating Toronto Parks grant at least 3 times with at least 1 approved grant in the past 3 years, and be committed to continue working in a park as described in the application or in a similar way for the next 3 years. Importantly and beautifully, in this case, you actually don't need to think about your specific programming for the year 2 and year 3. You are going to be submitting your application just as usual for 1 year for the next year programming, and just check the box to say that you want to be considered for 3 years. And the assumption is that you want to continue in the same fashion, but the specific details of your year 3 and year 2 are not asked of you in this case. So it's a very relatively simple way to be considered for 3-year funding. Applicants with fewer than 3 Animating Toronto Parks grants may be considered for this opportunity. So please get in touch, especially if you have a proven track record of consistent presence and programming in the park, even if the formal eligibility requirement isn't met, which is outlined above. Before you decide whether you are ready to apply for this program, I would recommend considering the program timeline. Applying for a grant in this case is not just about submitting the application and then delivering the project that you applied to get funding for. There's quite a lot of activities in between. And so in this case, you will apply by application deadline in early June. You then will be notified by early October. Please note that the results will be available through TAC portal, and just maybe marking your calendar for early October for results might be helpful, because even if the email with the notification announcement is missed, you know that you can always log in and actually see those results if you know when they're available. Then if you do get a grant, there will be a program orientation in November where we will go through all the processes that are involved in this program. And then approximately from January to March of the following year, there will be quite a bit of paperwork for the grant recipients, such as park permit applications. You will submit conditions on the release of the funds, and you'll get the funding. And then approximately from February to June of the following year, and by following, I mean the year that follows the year in which you apply. So you will work with Arts in the Parks team and park people and local community groups on marketing, outreach, community engagement, and project planning. And finally, June to September of the year following the year in which you apply, you will have your project take place in one of the Toronto parks outside of downtown core. And final reports will be due 90 days after the project completion date. That date actually is entirely in your hands because you put the project completion date in your application when you submit it. So keep in mind that you will need to submit your final report 90 days after. And also do keep in mind that all major changes, if they take place in your project, must be communicated to the program manager. Let's talk about eligibility. This is a beautiful program because it's a really wide eligibility. It is open to individual artists, not-for-profit arts organizations, artist collectives, and also actually to not-for-profit organizations that are not arts-based if They have artistic leadership of professional artists involved on this specific project. A professional artist is somebody who has developed their skills through training or practice, is recognized as such by artists working in the same artistic field, actively practices their art, seeks payment for their work, and has a history of public presentation or exhibition. This eligibility description is really a reference. We do have flexibility in place when it comes to identifying as a professional artist. And long story short, if you think you're a professional artist and identify as one, that it means you are probably eligible to apply to this program. Importantly, you may not apply as an individual and be part of an organization or collective applying in the same competition. And also, you may not apply for the same project in different grants programs. In terms of eligibility requirements for individuals and organizations and collectives. So on the individual side, you must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident or have an application pending for permanent residency or be a protected person, approved refugee claimant. Also, you must be a resident of the City of Toronto and have lived here for at least 12 months before the application deadline, and live and work in Toronto for at least 8 months a year. You cannot use post office box address to meet the residency requirement. You also cannot apply to this program if you are pursuing undergraduate or graduate studies and the project is related to the program of study. For organizations and collectives, so organizations, of course, must be located in the City of Toronto with the address not being post office box address. And in terms of collectives, collective is defined as two or more artists working together, and this can be ongoing work, or you can come together specifically for this project. And if it's two artists, then both of you must be residents of the City of Toronto. And if it's more people, then majority of the artists must be residents of the City of Toronto. Important piece here, collectives must be prepared to submit bank account information in the name of the collective as listed in the application, if the application is successful. And I cannot emphasize this enough. I know that at the stage when you are considering applying to the program, this seems like a very remote possibility. But the truth is that if you do get approved as a collective, there is no way to then receive that grant into any other account other than account in the name of the collective. And so then some work is involved into obtaining that if you don't already have one. Keep that in mind when you decide whether to apply as a collective or individual. And I also want to point out that when you apply as an individual, that doesn't mean that you will be working on your own, right? Especially in this program, applying as an individual only means that it's your personal name on the application and that you will receive funding in your individual bank account. But there is still a section that asks you to include your project contributors. So you can be working with other artists, with actually many artists, and they can have significant presence in your project and still apply as an individual. So that's just something to keep in mind. And in fact, in this program, it's highly unusual for somebody to apply as an individual and just be working on their own. It's not impossible, but it's very tricky to meet all the administrative requirements and also deliver quality public art programming in the park if you are working entirely by yourself. Another aspect of eligibility is actually what other programs you have applied or are planning to apply at TAC. TAC has two distinct funding envelopes. One, arts discipline. These are project and operating grants in dance, visual arts, theater, and so on. And the second is strategic programs such as Animating Toronto Parks, Open Door, Animating Historic Sites. When you log into your TAC portal and you go to apply for a program and see the list of the programs available to you that are open for applications in any given moment, it actually shows the funding envelope for each program. So you will see strategic or arts discipline. And so you can only have one active program in every envelope at a time. And active means either you're still working on your project, or even you applied and waiting for the results, or you still have your final report pending. So it's one project per, or excuse me, one application per envelope at a time, and up to one grant in every envelope per year. So that is the maximum you can receive per year. The exception to this rule is actually Animating Toronto Parks program. If you did receive this grant last year, the previous year for activities happening this year, you still can apply this year for activities taking place next year, even though technically your final report is not even due yet because the application deadline precedes the time when most of the projects take place in the parks. Let's talk about park selection. You will see in the program guidelines eligible parks. We do have a list. It's about 30 parks in Scarborough, Etobicoke, North York, East York, and York. We do have a map of eligible parks that is included with this presentation. It's also linked to the program guidelines and to the program webpage. So do check that out if you're still unsure which park to pick. Additionally, there is an opportunity to select other on the park list. If you do pick other, make sure that the park is still located in Toronto outside of the downtown core. So it meets the general geographical eligibility requirement for this program. Assignment of a park outside of the designated park list cannot be guaranteed, but will be considered if compelling rationale is included, such as ongoing work in a local park. And I want to emphasize that this option to select a different park is really meant largely for the artisan groups that have already been working in the local parks and previously could not apply to this program because the park was not on the list. So if you are selecting a park, shopping around for a park, please do not choose other, pick something from the designated park list. But if you have been working in your local park or have extensive relationship with the local community or other very significant reason for selecting a park that's not on the list, please do that and it will be considered. Important to note, the assignment of the chosen park cannot be guaranteed either, regardless of whether you picked other or one of the parks on the list. You can choose one or more parks in the park selection section of the grant application. I would suggest that everybody who is planning to program multiple parks considers everything that goes into it beyond artistic labor. Let's say if you're planning 5 shows in 5 different parks, that means you need to apply for 5 park permit, establish relationship with 5 local groups or more, do the outreach work and audience development for all of those 5 parks and so on. And for that reason, for first-time applicants, we definitely suggest that you only pick one park. And if it's not your first time applying, you could apply for more than one, but again, keep all that labor beyond artistic labor in mind. So how do you apply for this grant? Of course, first thing to do is to read the program guidelines. This is something that's published on the program webpage and also is accessible from the application on the portal itself. And this is really a document that is meant to help with establishing eligibility, but also the program fit and what's possible in the program. And this is the document that this information video is largely based on. In the document, in the program guidelines, there is the parks descriptions, so you can review those in the document and of course visit your park of choice. Ideally, there is some good reason of why you are selecting a certain park. However, sometimes projects are adapted to be in the park for this program, so there's not always a specific reason, but do choose a park carefully because you will be asked to describe the reason why you chose a particular park. Then if you don't have a TAC Smart Simple account, you should create one. And once you have an account, start the application. When you click on the application, it starts your draft. You don't have to finish it if you decide you don't want to apply. There is no problem. But opening the application allows you to access all the questions that are being asked. And I think it helps actually shape the project, especially if you are coming up with a proposal that is specific to this program. Again, there is nothing wrong with adapting your existing programming to a city park, but usually the most compelling and striking applications are those that are very site-specific and really respond to the call that this program puts forward for community-engaged arts programming in the parks. Then if you're a first-time applicant, please do talk to the program manager. I suggest that you talk to the program manager, to myself in this case, after having reviewed the guidelines and the application form, if that is accessible to you, because in that case, you will come prepared with your questions, and that would be the best use of our time. But everybody, not just the first-time applicant, can reach out with any questions you might have about the eligibility or process or any questions in the application and so on. And finally, please submit before the deadline. The time to submit is 11:59 p.m. on the deadline date. A lot of people do submit very, very close to the deadline. I recommend not doing it for your own sake. You can maybe set your internal deadline a couple days earlier to avoid potential technical issues that always come up, but especially on the portal with multiple people working at the same time, that increases chances of tech problems. However, if you do run into tech problems on the last day before the deadline, do not worry. Anything that's technical that you cannot get help with in the moment, we'll sort that out as long as your application is submitted and is in the portal. Let's talk about accessibility supports. Applicants who are deaf or have a disability and need support to complete their grant applications can apply for funds to cover the costs of assistance from application support service providers. That is up to $500 per eligible applicant per year. So this is not per program or an application. So if you're planning to apply to multiple programs in any given calendar year and you will require support from somebody with writing and submitting the application, please keep that in mind. And if you decide to utilize this opportunity, then please reach out to the program manager to confirm eligibility and also to set up your service provider for the payment. Successful applicants to a TAC project grant may also apply for the TAC accessibility grant up to a maximum of $5,000 towards accessibility costs for involved artists and project contributors who identify as deaf or disabled. Applicants have the flexibility of applying for the accessibility grant at any time during their project timeline. Multiple applications can be made where the request can accumulate up to the maximum amount. So if your accessibility needs evolved and you have submitted application for this grant for, let's say, $1,000, then you can submit another one for $2,000 and so on for up to $5,000 per project. And the turnaround time for this grant is actually quite quick. It is not a peer review process for this grant. It's administrative process that is based purely on eligibility. So you can receive that funding pretty quickly, usually within a month. Unlike TAC Accessibility Grant, Animating Toronto Parks grant and all other grants at Toronto Arts Council are assessed by a grant review panel of practicing artists with input, in this case, from the program partners. So it's your peers, artists working in the city of Toronto, who are making decision on the funding recommendations. And they do it using assessment criteria that are specific for each program. In this case, the assessment criteria are artistic merit, extent to which the proposed project will engage and include local community, quality of experience the proposed activity will provide to the community, demonstrated capacity of the applicant to carry out the project as outlined, and financial viability of the project, including adequate payment of artist fees. And I would really recommend keeping those 5 assessment criteria in mind when you're working on your application. Maybe have it in front of you physically or digitally, because it's really, really important to have all those 5 areas covered. You know, if you have striking artistic support material, but there is no demonstrated capacity to carry out the project, it will be very hard for the panel to make a decision to fund the project, even if you actually have the demonstrated capacity, unless it's written in the application and is very clear from the application itself. Unfortunately, the panel wouldn't know that you're very, very capable of carrying out the project as outlined. So do keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that this panel is always multidisciplinary because Animating Toronto Parks is a multidisciplinary program. So something that is common sense within your discipline might not be very clear to the peer assessors working in other disciplines. So be specific and detailed when it comes to your proposal. And last but not least, you can reach out to me with any questions via email or by phone. Every year, I also offer some support, application support activities such as drop-in office hours or one-on-one calls or meetings. So please do check the webpage for this program and be in touch with any question. Thank you so much for your interest in this program and have a great day. Bye-bye.